Awesome. Well, we are at 11 a.m. Pacific, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. This is Drew Amoroso again, and thanks for joining us today for this week's edition of 11 at 11. I appreciate you being here, and congratulations to you for taking some time out of your busy week to work on yourself and on your workday. Today, we're going to be talking about what has recently become one of my favorite topics to discuss, and it's the concept of buffers and buffering. So I have really come to learn and believe that the ability to understand and overcome buffers is one of the most important aspects of personal and professional development. In order to discuss buffers, we have to start first, I think, with examining how our minds are wired. So from an evolutionary standpoint, our minds are really wired to seek experience and pleasure, or to experience pleasure, excuse me. As a species, we evolved in such a way where we were always looking for things that give us pleasure and help us stay safe, and to avoid things that would cause us discomfort or pain or put our lives into jeopardy, right? When we experience pleasure, that signals to us survival, right? So eating the right kinds of foods, procreation, comfort, and circumstances that make us feel safe and really protected. On the flip side, we evolved to understand that discomfort means the potential for death or danger, right? Things like dangerous environments, actions that have uncertain outcomes, right? Illness, starvation, a whole host of other things that signal to us discomfort. And over time, as we've evolved as a species, we become incredibly skilled at making pleasure convenient, right? In the form of food, entertainment, safety, social pleasure, and an endless list of things that moment to moment make us feel good and that we can use to really occupy our time. And in the process of doing that, what we've done is essentially edged out our tolerance for discomfort. So in other words, because pleasure has become so convenient for us, and we can have it at our fingertips in minutes, and we can have access to it all day long, we have built up an intolerance to discomfort. And what's happened is our minds have become very skilled over time at the ability to avoid and push away things that we know cause us to have discomfort, or that may cause the potential for discomfort. And the truly sneaky part about this is that it's our subconscious mind that often does this, right? Oftentimes without us even knowing it. So our thinking brain doesn't necessarily make an intentional decision to do this. It's our subconscious brain that does it for us. Again, because that's how it survived for tens of thousands of years. So that's where buffers come into play. Buffers are just essentially distractions, right? They are thoughts or actions that help us to avoid discomfort. They help us avoid people, feelings, emotions, or anything else that will cause us discomfort or that will trigger an emotion that we don't want to experience. So buffers allow us to hide behind something pleasurable so that we don't have to confront something that might have the potential to cause us pain, right? They're things that put some distance between us and emotions that we don't want to experience. And because pleasure is so readily available, we become incredibly expert at inserting pleasure as a way to keep pain or uncomfortability at a distance. So buffers come in all shapes and forms: food, alcohol, drugs, shopping, mindless tasks, social media, TV, procrastinating, right? Anything that provides us with what we think is a temporary sense of satisfaction or pleasure. Now, layered on top of this are the messages that we get all day, every day, in the form of advertisements and media and social norms and social constructs that tell us that it's not only okay, but that we are entitled to experience immediate happiness all day long. Right? We're literally trained that if something feels uncomfortable, we should buy a product to make it better, or engage in an experience that will take us away from that moment of discomfort, right? It's not only okay, that's what the expectation is. And so what we end up doing is buffering. We buffer all day long so that we make the things that we don't like about our life or about our workday, we make them tolerable, right? We feel entitled to experience happiness all the time. And because of that framework, our mind is constantly trying to avoid things that we know will cause us discomfort. But here's the deal. Constantly feeling pleasure and happiness is not natural. It's not normal. It's not how our day-to-day experience is supposed to be. There is essential information that our minds and our bodies need to survive and to grow that can only be learned through periods of discomfort or unhappiness, right? We cultivate strength and wisdom and knowledge and resilience and a whole host of other important kinds of information that are essential to growth. And we can only learn those things from periods of uncomfortability. But when we buffer, we keep those important lessons and emotions and feelings at an arm's length, right? And that prevents us from engaging in the kind of experiences that we need to live a more full, rich life. Buffering also keeps us at a place of mediocrity, right? At a place of just, we're sort of tolerating everything, right? Because we're substituting in things that are comfortable and safe for things that might otherwise cause us temporary discomfort, but that ultimately will help us grow. So I want to just pause here for a second, and I want us to collectively think about how this concept applies to our work days, right? I want you to take a second to scan your day for things that you think might be buffers or that you're using to buffer. So what things might you be doing during your workday that are keeping you at a distance from experiencing discomfort? What are you putting between you and a new experience that allows you to avoid discomfort? So in the workday context, we use all sorts of buffers like the ones that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. But in addition to those, we do things like, instead of working on tough projects, we create these elaborate responses to emails all day, and we fill our time with mindless tasks, right? Instead of taking on challenges that might advance our career, we keep doing the things that we know how to do. And when we do that, that hinders our own advancement, right? So we fill our days with a bunch of stuff that's nice and safe instead of the things that help us grow and push us outside of our comfort zone. We also come up with reasons why, I just don't have time for X, Y, or Z. When X, Y, or Z is actually something hard that we just don't want to make time for, because it means that we're going to need to be uncomfortable in order to do it. That's a classic one. I don't have time for this. We say that, but what's happening under the surface is we're saying that sounds like something that's going to be hard, so I'm going to fill my day with a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I think if you look closely at your day, you're probably engaged in all sorts of things that your mind is expertly designed to keep you at a distance from uncomfortability. And your mind has also told you a nice elaborate story about why you need that thing in your life, or it helps you to justify why you should do that instead of doing the things that will make you uncomfortable. And so in the big picture, right, buffers over time truly impede your growth because they prevent you from unlocking that big, expansive, bold, powerful, motivated person and version of yourself that wants to grow, that wants to achieve, that wants to take on a whole bunch of new experiences. So buffers are incredibly powerful, and they're really ingrained in our day-to-day experience in a way that makes them hard to extract without really intentional practice. So what I want to leave you with today is just a little mini framework that you can start to practice that will help you to begin to notice where you might be inserting buffers into your day. So first, here's how this works. I want you to start just simply by identifying one thing in your day that you think you might be using as a buffer. Again, remember, they can be distractions, simple tasks that you choose over more difficult ones, social media, conversations with people, breaks, something that you put into your day, maybe that gives you a sense of gratification or pleasure or happiness that you've inserted, not necessarily because you want it or because you need it, right? But because it helps you avoid something uncomfortable. So for the sake of an example here, I'll use one from my life. I realized a long time ago when I started my own business that I was inserting really mindless tasks into my day so that I didn't have to take on these big, challenging, important projects that I needed to take on in order for my business to grow. So I'd fill my days with things like, responding to emails, taking hours on administrative work, setting up these elaborate systems that I didn't need to, right? Or planning for hours when I didn't need to. And I realized that I was doing this because if I was busy with the simple stuff, that meant I didn't have to do the challenging stuff. If I was busy, I didn't have to try to sell or find clients, and I could avoid the potential that they would say no to me. So I was creating a buffer between someone telling me, no, I don't want to hire you, Drew. If I was busy, I didn't have to create new products or new trainings, which meant that I didn't have to risk someone telling me that they thought my work wasn't good. So I was creating a buffer between a conversation where someone said, yeah, we don't really like this, or it wasn't as good as we thought it would be. So it turns out I was putting all of this easy stuff into my day because it meant that I could avoid the potential that I'd experienced those types of discomfort. So as a starting point, think about your day and just identify like one thing where you think you might be using it as a buffer to potentially avoid some of those experiences I just mentioned. Second, if you want to truly see if that thing is acting like a buffer, ask the question, is this thought or action helping me to avoid something that I don't want to confront or experience? Now, again, our mind, we have to be aware of this. Our mind is so expert in deceiving us into thinking that we need things. And it's very good at justifying the utility of something that's ultimately just holding us back from something greater that we want from ourselves. But now that I've given you some background, I want you to really search hard to try to understand if there's something greater that you might want, right? That might require some discomfort, but that ultimately will lead to the growth that you want to experience. And in my example, it became very clear that I truly wanted growth for my business. And I wanted expansive growth for myself. But I had inserted all these things into my day without really knowing it until I actually surveyed how I was spending my time. And then third and finally, if you identify something that you think is a buffer, ask the question, what could I experience, right, if I limited or removed this buffer? In other words, what would some temporary discomfort bring you? What would happen if you exposed yourself to something hard or challenging on purpose instead of avoiding it, right? Instead of just being drug into it? What would intentionally sitting in discomfort a little bit each day bring you, right? What if you became expert at being uncomfortable for a couple of minutes a day, right? Now, I know that that might sound like something where you hear it and you want to run the other direction because we know what that feels like. But when you get scared like that, it probably means you've identified an incredibly important pocket of growth, right? If you're scared, it means you're suppressing a true opportunity to grow. And that growth is right on the other side of some temporary discomfort. So, last point here, how do you pull yourself through a moment like this? The key, I believe, is to spend time envisioning and internalizing what lies on the other side of discomfort, right? You can't become expert at getting in touch with the growth or the opportunity that lies on the other side, right? Until you visualize and see it and feel it and understand it, right? And at some point, the repetition of that leads to a willingness to go and be uncomfortable because you understand that your desire for something greater for yourself outweighs that discomfort, right? I feel uncomfortable all the time. And I still realize that subconsciously I'm creating buffers all day to avoid things I don't want to experience. Like I clear out some other buffers, I experience some new challenges, and then my mind wants to put in a next level set of buffers, right? But every time I choose to engage with that discomfort, it's because I've come to a place where I want the growth more than I want the temporary feeling of comfort that a buffer provides, right? Sometimes it's an immediate realization and sometimes it takes practice to envision it, but I only get over the hump when the growth I want outweighs the discomfort. Okay, I know that that was a lot to digest, but before we sign off, does anyone have an example of a buffer that you think you might have in your day that you'd like to share with the group? Something that as we're going through, you said, yep, I know that I'm doing this, or maybe it was something that you've been doing that subconsciously you didn't realize was a buffer, but that you can probably confidently say now it is. Maybe it's I show up to 11 at 11 each week because I don't want to work for 15 minutes on Mondays. Maybe that's your buffer. Okay. Buffers are a real thing. They're a real thing that gets in our way. So I would encourage you to go through that little 3-step process that I just showed you. See if you can identify some things that are getting in the way of you really experiencing the kind of growth that you want day to day. Okay, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks again for joining, everyone. As I always mention, would love to connect with you and get your help spreading the word about this series. If you could share with a friend or give us a shout out on social media, that would be awesome. I'd appreciate it. I've got all of our information up here. If you're watching the recorded version of this on YouTube, we would love if you could like this episode and subscribe to our channel. It really helps raise the visibility of what we're doing. Quick but important programming note, this will actually be our last 11 at 11 over Zoom. So we're going to be moving off of Zoom and onto LinkedIn Live and Facebook and Instagram moving forward. So we're going to send you some instructions in our next email on how to attend on those mediums. If you're not familiar with them, and our instructions are not clear enough, I hope that they will be, but if they are not and you want some help, we're more than happy to get you set up and give you some specific instructions on how to access them. We're going to be holding them at the same time, just on a different medium, because we want to sort of expand the visibility of what we are doing. We're going to continue to record and post episodes to YouTube. So if you happen to miss, you can still watch the recorded versions. Are there any questions about that? I also want to just say thank you to many of you who are on here who have been with us from the beginning, right? When we first did this, our 21st episode. So thank you to all of you who have consistently showed up. And I know that you've also been spreading the word and sharing this with people. So we really appreciate you doing that. And I hope that when we transfer over to a new medium, you'll come along with us. Okay. We are back next week at the same time. Instructions on how to access us will be in your inbox. I will look forward to pulling up with you then. Go have a great work day. See you next time, everybody.